I've been having incredibly interesting discussions and convos and listening to incredibly interesting stuff about artificial intelligence over the last few days. Just, I don't know, there's just been a lot of it, like a little glut that's come out. And that is so interesting to me. And there are so many ethical questions around it. And I'm really anti AI for the record. But I wanted to, and I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about something more in the news, but I did want to stop and put this in the world because I wanted to be one of the first to get it out there. Remember the following, quote me on this: artificial intelligence is not artificial imagination, and you can't replace the human imagination with a machine, full stop. Number two, I finally came up with an AI that I like from popular culture. And the answer is it's Lisa from Weird Science. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. But let's talk, that thing. Immigration, LA, troops on the streets, stuff we don't want to talk about. My partner, my wife is so, she's so awesome. When all this protesting started and things started escalating in LA last week, Friday, really. Her question was straightforward. It was, how did this start? And so I explained it all to her, and she was like, oh my God, none of that is okay. And I know, right? And I don't think that the national news media is covering it properly. So before I get into that, thank you for listening to Trent Takes On. I'm back for this really important episode that centers around something that's happening very close to me. I'm not originally from California. I was born and raised in the South, from Oklahoma. My family, after I moved out here right out of high school, basically. I moved here on my 19th birthday. Well, shortly after. And I've kind of lived here ever since. And I've always described where I live as LA to them because they can't wrap their brain around the way this whole metro area it works. Like there's LA County, which I've lived in a couple times, not for extended periods of time, but there's LA County. There's Orange County. Orange County I've lived in quite a bit. And then San Bernardino County. And they're all and Riverside County. And they're all four counties are kind of like jammed together. And I guess there's Ventura County. Anyway, there's little bits and pieces of northern counties that touch the greater LA area. There's bits and pieces like all of this is one giant city. Like you just go from city to city. There's no real like where I'm from, cities are separated by, miles of empty roads. Like there's nothing between cities, right? There's 10 miles between two cities and there's nothing but fields and creeks and forests and stuff. And it's not like that here. This is all one giant city. That's like 50 odd miles wide and like 100 miles long. It's huge. And I've lived here for really, 30 years. I've lived here for a long time and I know it fairly well. The area where these protests are happening around the federal building in LA and in Paramount, we're talking about two, 3 or 4 square block areas. If all of greater Los Angeles were a football field, like 120 yards long and whatever it is wide. I don't even remember. 33 yards wide, something like that. The area that we're talking about would be the size of like a cell phone. That's how big it is on a football field. The area that we're talking about is nothing in the grand scheme of how big this city is. So when we talk about these protests, they're happening. Yes, they're not big. We're not talking tens of thousands of people. We're talking, I think the worst day it was like There were like 120 people. The police presence has outnumbered the protesters the entire time. And let's just talk real quick about what it is. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, used to have these rules about how rules. They're called laws. These laws about how they approach potential undocumented people and how they like do raids and things. Like they have to have a target list, and they have to like figure out whether or not there are likely to be undocumented people there, and then they have to get warrants. They have to go through an immigration judge to pick up a warrant so that they can do the raids, so that they can round up people. And then they vet them for their immigration status. And then they detain those who don't have an immigration status. In other words, they're undocumented. And then they have to release everyone else. So that was the way ICE used to have to go about doing raids. Whether it was fair or not, whether, immigration judges were on the up and up or not, at least there was a process to go through. And they had to always show their work. You got to show your work. Well, under the Trump regime, fascist regime, they don't do that. They don't bother with any of that. They just raid indiscriminately wherever they want. Basically, it's an old... there are war crimes and there are war crimes, right? Kill them all, figure it out later, sort them out later. That's what they're doing. They're just arresting them all. They'll figure it out later. And it's an open violation to people's rights. I've talked about this on this pod, that if you stand on American soil, you are owed due process. All of due process. All of due process. In other words, you can't be arrested for no fucking reason. You are not subject to search and seizure by police officers of any sort without either a warrant or probable cause. And they don't have that. They're just skipping around all this due process and going straight to, we're going to round up a bunch of people and they're going to detain people for extended periods of time. There are so many stories of this. They round up people who are here perfectly legally, who have all their stuff in order, even U.S. citizens in some cases. They're rounding them up. They're putting them in detention. If they can get them out of the country, they do. If those people happen to have lawyers, they could fight and they could stop them from being deported immediately. But think about this. They're just showing up in a Home Depot parking lot in Paramount and chasing everyone, all of these day laborers. When you see all the day laborers at a Home Depot, do you think they're all undocumented immigrants? Is that the first thing that hits your head? Is that the first thought that you have? Because they're not. Many of them are either legal permanent residents or even American citizens, people who are just trying to make a buck, trying to get by in a very, very, very expensive place to live. A lot of these people are just trying to work, they're not criminals. They're not here illegally. They're not doing anything wrong except maybe avoiding some taxes if you're getting paid under the table. But if that's the big crime, then the people that are hiring them are the ones really committing the crime, aren't they? So the question is, do we realize, and mainstream media is doing a terrible job of contextualizing this, but I listen to things like Pod Save America and Midas Touch and independent media sources that are doing a poor job of contextualizing this. So those people who are being rounded up and incarcerated, and they're going to figure it out later. Their rights are being violated. Their constitutional rights as people who stand on American soil. You have those rights, the right to due process. The reason that we have those rights is so that people who shouldn't be caught up into these things aren't. This is where the whole innocent until proven guilty thing comes in. Okay, these are important rights that our founding fathers were like, England and the monarchy doesn't do this. We are going to do it this way. It is not going to be a 'cause I said so country. All right. This is going to be a country of laws, and we are going to have rules, and you're going to have to follow those rules and those laws. And that's how we're going to govern ourselves, with laws and rules, and things are going to make sense. And they do, mostly. Some things get antiquated. Some things need to be updated. Some things have been added to penal codes over the years. It is what it is. You have to kind of grow as society grows around you. You know, they didn't have computers back then, but computer crime is still a crime, right? So those laws have had to be added. That's all it works. But there are immigration laws and there are rules that these immigration and customs enforcement are supposed to be following, and they're just not doing it. And that's a serious issue. So the protests are about the Paramount Home Depot raids and another raid that happened in the garment district on some textile workers there. And the head of a union of day laborers got wrapped up in this and got incarcerated. He was held for 3 days and then released. But he's been charged with, I want to say it was like conspiracy to something, interfere in ICE, whatever. I don't have the exact charge, but they've charged him with something, which is horseshit. And it's all on video. And the guy got beaten up for trying to record what was happening. You know, you have a First Amendment right to freedom of speech, and that includes freedom of assembly. You're allowed to be places peaceably. He wasn't trespassing or anything. He was trying to record what was going on, and they beat him up, and it's all on video. So a lot of people should be in huge trouble for this. They probably won't be. But these are the two main instances that spark these protests. And what are all the photos that you see? They're all of burning Waymos. Do you know what a Waymo is? People don't know what Waymos are. These are Google self-driving cars. And people were calling the Waymos to have them come to the protest area, and then they were setting them on fire. Now, it turns out that the government, ICE in particular, Homeland Security, has been using Google's Waymo cameras that they have on top of these, or on these self-driving cars, as surveillance for their operations. And so that's the connection between the Waymos and the protesters burning them. Most people in this country don't even know what a Waymo is. And I wish I didn't. I had to learn. I didn't know what it was either. But now I do, and I learned that I saw the story about this, and I was like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. And Google lets them do it because, Google is doing everything they can to stay on, the fascists' good side, because the fascists choose winners and losers, and Google wants to be a winner. Alphabet wants to be a winner. Apple wants to be a winner. Microsoft wants to be a winner. OpenAI, they want to be winners. So they suck up to their fascist regime. So it's up to the people to point this out. Now, the protests were peaceful, and then there were some instigators amongst them, who could be anybody, who start vandalizing, which is graffiti, spray paint. You know what? Honestly, that's not that bad. A little spray paint. It's unsightly maybe, but is that worthy of what comes next? You decide. There were some Waymos that were set on fire. That's pretty rough. And what happens? Escalation. More and more LAPD show up. Mounted LAPD horses dispersing what they referred to as rioters, who weren't really rioting at the time. But they had it under control. And then on Friday night, Donald Trump announced that he was nationalizing 2,000 California guardsmen, National Guards. Now, the National Guards are controlled by the governors of the states. The federal government can step in and federalize them in the case of rebellion or insurrection. Basically, if somebody's trying to overthrow the government, they can do that. That is not the case here at all. So the justification for doing this was sketchy at best, but they sent in 2,000 National Guardsmen who are not allowed to do police work. That's one of the rules. They can't do police work. They can guard things. They can protect things. They can protect people. But they cannot arrest anyone. They are not trained for that. They do not understand the rights that are afforded suspects. They don't know. So they're not allowed to. Police. Military is military. Guard is guard. You know what I'm saying? So we got 2,000 National Guards added to this little tiny area in downtown LA to protect the federal building. Okay. There's nowhere for them to sleep. They have no food. Have you ever tried to feed like an office full of people, like 15, 20 people for lunch? You ever tried to do that? Sometimes it's a real pain in the ass. Imagine if it's 2,000 people. They didn't bring the food with them. And then the next day, the Department of Defense, which is the actual military, sent 700 troops, they activated 700 troops from 29 Palms, California, and sent them, and they arrived on Sunday. So now we got 2,000 National Guardsmen, 700 Marines, and then Donald Trump felt like that wasn't enough, so he nationalized 2,000 more National Guardsmen and sent them as well. So we've got 4,700 military personnel patrolling a little teeny tiny 1-2 block area. And yeah, the protests have basically, they continue, but there's been no more burning. Everybody's like, they get pushed back by the National Guard and the LAPD, which is there in equal numbers. You know, there's thousands of LAPD and LA Sheriff's Department, lots of law enforcement there. So the federal government has sent in a bunch of people to quote unquote quell this rebellion. That's what they keep saying, insurrection and rebellion. And the reason that they're saying that is because they want to basically install martial law, where the government's military force becomes the police. And that's really something, isn't it? They're not trained for any of this. They don't understand due process. They don't understand policing. Policing is its own, it's a different job than fighting wars overseas. Or even fighting wars here, if you were actually invaded in some way, which has not happened. This escalation was uncalled for, dangerous. It's still a dangerous situation, but I can't stress this enough. It's this little teeny tiny part of LA. And the President Trump, Mad King Donald, keeps going on television and talking about how LA is burning, about how the entire city is going to burn to the ground. That's just not true. It's not even remotely true. There is larger rioting every time a sports team wins a title. Every time the Lakers win a title, there's way more destruction, devastation, and lawlessness. There was way more destruction and lawlessness in Philadelphia this year when they won the Super Bowl than there has been here. Like, by a multitude, by 100 times. But he didn't need to send in the National Guard then. So they promised that these ICE raids, the raids that they're doing, these indiscriminate raids, are going to continue for the next 60 days. And that now the military is there to protect the ICE agents. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. I just went over a whole lot of information. This is fascism. Plain and simple. This is the militaristic arm of fascism. This is what's his official name? Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller. This is him. This is his dream of what America is going to look like. I want you to think about it with me. Okay, you ready? There are, according to, I'm going to use MSNBC as an example here. There's an MSNBC reporter named Jacob Soboroff, who's absolutely awesome, who was here covering these protests, this unrest, and the military that followed. And now he's in Ventura County because they're raiding agricultural areas now. They're just trying to round up farm workers who are really awful, horrible criminals who desperately need to be deported, right? Yeah. So Soboroff was here, and he kept reminding us that there are over 10 million people in the greater Los Angeles area, and that of those 10 million people, there's an estimate that there's like a million, as many as a million undocumented people here. What he's failing to remind you is that Los Angeles is a majority-minority county, and the majority of that minority is Latin American, is Latino. So you're looking at like another 4 million people who are actual citizens of the United States, who were born here, who are multiple generations born here, who are here perfectly legally, having done everything that they can do. They're here on green cards. They're here as permanent residents. They're here working. These are all people who have followed the law. But now they have to live in a place where Immigration and Customs Enforcement is just rounding people up and sorting it out later. And in some cases, their sorting it out later involves sending people to CICOT, prison in El Salvador. Sending people to prison without due process. And out of Politico this week, the Trump regime is now going to start sending migrants to Guantanamo Bay. The plan is to eventually hold as many as 30,000 there. For now, it's going to start with 9,000 there. This is an extremely expensive place to hold people. Also, I'd like to point out that Guantanamo Bay is a prison, used as a prison. They're going to retrofit it and use it as a prison. So, once again, we're going to detain people without their due process, and we're going to send them to prison. Okay? That's the plan. They announce it. They want it out there because they want the millions of people. And I'm not talking about the undocumented population of this country. I'm talking about real U.S. citizens, permanent residents, people who have legal status. They want every single one of them to live in absolute terror. And they're succeeding. Because people should be scared. That is scary shit. This podcast is supposed to be about the world I'm leaving for my kids. I'm not proud of this. Not the podcast. I like the podcast. I'm not proud of what's happening in this country. I'm not proud of what's happening in our society. I'm not proud of how we're moving forward. I'm not proud of how I've been called a snowflake for the last 10 years for giving a fuck about other people, for being quote unquote woke, for understanding that the world doesn't revolve around me, for understanding that there are people out there that are suffering every single day. There are people out there that will never get the opportunities that I was afforded because I happen to be born white. Just chance that I happen to be born white. I happen to be born in the United States. I happen to be a male. I happen to be straight. All circumstance. Just chance. That's who I am. I was afforded extra opportunity, or at least not denied opportunity. I didn't really take much advantage of it, to be honest. But I wasn't afforded the opportunity. I was afforded opportunities that other people are not, because of the color of their skin, because of who their parents were, because of who they love, because of the gods that they worship, because of any number of reasons. I'm not proud of this society. This is ugly. This is bad. This is not the way we're supposed to be. Even if you just take the words of Christ on their face value, you know that this isn't the Christian way to go. And these people call themselves Christians. You're supposed to love thy neighbor. You're supposed to treat him like your brother. The meek shall inherit the earth, right? Feed the poor, right? Stop hurting each other. Oh my God. Woke. I've said that before too, haven't I? Jesus Christ was woke. Woke, bro, was woke. This is who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to look out for each other. That's what sets us apart from the animals. That's what makes us better. I'm sorry to all the animals out there. You guys are better right now. Well, I don't know. They're really kind of indiscriminate animals. And that's the thing, isn't it? Civilization, society is the greatest invention of our species. Our ability to communicate, our ability to work together toward common goals. We're not designed to survive. We're designed to thrive. We're designed to push nature to its bounds. And we do that, usually in a negative way. But we're supposed to be better than this nonsense. Did we really vote for this? Do they really think that this is okay? Do they really think that tanks in the streets are going to impress us on Saturday? I'm going to be part of the No Kings protests this weekend. My family and I are going to do it. Because we should. And I know that it's scary sometimes. But there is strength in numbers. And there are proper ways to go about this. We are going to protest peacefully. We are going to use our voices. We are not going to inflame people. We are not going to start a fight. We're not going to be aggressive. We're going to peacefully protest. We're going to peacefully tell this country how we feel. And I have friends that are telling me, don't do it. Don't go out in this. I say, this is the exact time when we have to. This is the exact time when we have to. I'm not saying be violent. I'm not saying be aggressive. I'm not saying be destructive. Don't do any of those things, because those things you will be punished for, rightfully so. But we have to tell them in no uncertain terms that we don't approve of what this regime is doing. We have to tell the electeds that they have to, the Congress, that they have to start doing their job. We have to tell our own state governments that they have to start doing their job and standing up to the federal government and standing up to them and saying, no. You guys can't be for states' rights for red states and then ignore the states' rights of blue states. Nah. That's not the way it works, my friends. States' rights are a real thing. We don't need this. This is causing trouble here. This 5,000 troops in downtown LA, you think that's a good idea? How many protesters do you think there were yesterday? According to the videos I've seen, like 100, 120. Most of them like sitting down and singing, doing prayer circles. People are delivering flowers to the guardsmen and women. People are asking them, is this what you signed up for? Do you want to do this? It's a good question. I don't think they want to do this. I don't think this is what those guards people want to do. This is insane. This is madness. This is one person putting their predilection for chaos and violence into play so that their boss can consolidate more power. That's what it is. Stephen Miller hates us. And by that I mean all of us. He's not just a racist. He's not even close. He's a nationalist. And not a good nationalist. He's a fascist of the highest level. And he got called out by an ABC reporter named Terry Moran on Twitter. Posted saying he's a world-class hater. That he may not be the actual brains behind it, but he is the bile behind it all. Bile. I love that. It's a good turn of phrase. Terry rocked out that tweet. ABC News fired him because J.D. Vance threw a fit. The vice president threw a fit. How dare you talk shit on Stephen Miller? Stephen Miller is a world-class hater. You can tell that every fucking time he goes on TV. It's obvious. From the first place, he has disdain for everyone else in this world. He is vile. Maybe ABC will fire me. I just, things are bad out there. But they're not bad. I had an old friend on Facebook just like, I can't believe it's like this. I can't believe these protesters have gone so far. This is nothing. This is nothing. Nothing. This is nothing. You are falling for the propaganda. One picture of a guy with a Mexican flag standing on top of a burning Waymo. Oh man, that shit is going to be in the propaganda hall of fame. Because that's what the right has convinced the rest of the country. This is what's happening in LA. Never mind the fact that whole thing, that whole fucking instance could have happened in your garage. All of LA is burning. Nope. I went to the store yesterday and bought produce. We're all living our lives. We're all going to work every day or going about our whatever we do every day. We're just doing whatever we do. It isn't even just, they haven't even closed the freeway. Not one freeway is closed right now because of rioting and a burning city. How is that possible? Surely at least one would be shut down. Or they're gaslighting you like they always do. And the mainstream media is culpable because they're failing to contextualize any of this. They're failing to point out that there are millions and millions and millions of Latino Americans who live with that fear of being arrested and deported for no reason. You say the same thing about the way police regularly treat black people. Our black population lives in constant fear of the police just profiling. And we try really hard to pass laws and to try and fix these things, to try to iron these things out and to stop the profiling and to stop the way that we police indiscriminately violating people's rights. But it just doesn't seem to like latch on. We always have to go through these times, these eras of pain to get to the other side where we actually start to make some progress. The pendulum continues to swing. We were getting, too close to a multicultural, multiracial democracy. And the pendulum swung to fascism. And if we take back this country from the fascists, the pendulum swing will be to reform. And we will do everything in our power, to fix all of the fissures, all of the cracks, all of the issues that have become painfully obvious because the fascists were able to rise to power. Fascism is bad for everybody, even the fascists. They just don't realize it. And fascism can't last. You can't have rule by the minority. It does not work. It eventually collapses every time. Sometimes it takes decades, generations, sometimes just a few moments. Fascism will never control this country long term. It's unsustainable. Fact. The more people you have, the harder it is to control them. And they can't control us. We can try, but they'll fail. They also need us, to do things like make sure the plumbing works or that the power stays on. You know what I mean? They need us to make sure that the food gets to the store or that the food makes it out of the fields. The workers always have the power. You just don't realize it. So use your voice. Speak out in opposition to this. That's my request. And be positive. Do your best to remember that even though we are living in what feels like a dictatorship right now, one person is just saying, what I say goes, and I don't care about the law. As long as we get another election, as long as those election results are heeded, then we're not in a dictatorship yet. I tell you, it doesn't look good. I hate that. But remember, states run elections. And I don't think anybody really is super, super happy with the way things are going right now. The economy is teetering on the brink of total fucking chaos. It is an absolute environment of terror from sea to sea if you happen to not be white. And in a lot of cases, if you happen to be white and you're an enemy of the state. Because there are those of us who consider ourselves that. Like, I'm not a Trump fan. He would consider me his enemy. He'd be punching down, but, hey, I've got a little podcast that people listen to. Not supposed to hold. I've been instructed that I'm not supposed to hold up a sign. Don't bring them to our door. She's right. But what are we supposed to do? I thought I was the snowflake. Turns out that was all just more projection. I love you. All the people out there. Even the assholes. No, I tolerate you. I want you to be nicer people. That's what I want for the assholes out there. I appreciate you all for listening. I appreciate you all for coming with me on these journeys. I appreciate every single person who shares this with somebody else, every person who's positive, every person who holds open a door or says hello to somebody, to a stranger, everybody who makes somebody else's day with a simple gesture. The simple kindnesses are the things that really set us apart. Okay? If we stop, if we listen, if we engage, we're better people for it. On that note, I'm going to check out for the day. Thank you all so very much. I will come back and talk about AI very soon. It is top of mind for me. It's not top of mind. It's just up. I've got a lot of top of mind things. Right now I'm varying on is life. How many priorities am I allowed to have in this life? Stop laughing at your own jokes. That's another note that I got. Until next time, when I'll probably be talking about AI, Maybe next time. Maybe the time after that. It depends. I keep getting derailed with different stuff. Please, please, please be good humans. Be good to each other. We're in this together. Until then.